The Simpsons. It's been on for more than 3 decades. It's iconic. It's very influential and is the reason for a lot of popular shows today. But, one thing it isn't, is that it was never too big on continuity. For a show that's been going on for as long as The Simpsons, it makes sense for the writers behind to not really care about what's canon or events that happened in past episodes. While, yes, this can lead to some fans getting annoyed by certain events being retconned, it can give the writers more ideas for potential episodes. But, sometimes, there are those rare moments where The Simpsons care for continuity. Whether it be random callbacks to past episodes, Sideshow Bob popping up sporadically to kill Bart, or deaths in the show like Maude Flanders and Mona Simpson. However, one of the weirdest moments when The Simpsons decided to employ continuity in their show is when they did bring back one of Bart's one-off love interests and develop her and her relationship with Bart throughout multiple episodes. Bart having a girlfriend is not a notable thing in the show, and I truly mean that. It's probably one of, if not his most recurring plot in the show. Homer has his marriage crises with Marge. Marge has her new jobs. Lisa has her new and then forgotten friends, and Bart has his one-off celebrity love interests. But, Mary Spuckler and Bart was arguably the most explored relationship that Bart has ever had in the show, and honestly, because of this, it's one of the most interesting relationships Bart has ever had as well, and I'd argue one of the most interesting romantic relationships in the entire show. While expected as it's in the newer seasons, I'm very surprised at how little attention this little arc got. I know it's not a huge thing, but it's very experimental for an episodic show like The Simpsons, and I really wouldn't mind seeing more sagas like this in the show. So, without further ado, let's dive into the surprisingly overlooked Mary Spuckler saga, which includes Season 19's Apocalypse Cow, Season 24's Moonshine River, and Season 24's Love is a Many Splintered Thing.
So Dean Martin would show up at the last minute and do everything in just one take?
That's right.
But Wikipedia said he was passionate about rehearsal.
Don't you worry about Wikipedia. We'll change it when we get home. We'll change a lot of things.
Apocalypse Cow is a good episode. I enjoy the plot with Bart finally having a cowman, and I think that the humor is solid, but it is a very strange introduction in this saga when you put everything into context. While yes, every episode is technically set in its own universe, Apocalypse Cow doesn't actually really show any romantic involvement between Bart and Mary, and it's more platonic than anything, and because of that it weirdly feels like the odd one out in this trilogy. Thankfully, there are still some things to look at between the two in this episode. Bart first meets Mary Spuckler at 4-H as he tries to train a cow for a contest, but when he wins, he ends up finding out that his cow will get slaughtered first at a slaughterhouse. To protect the cow, he takes it to Mary's house, where she happens to be Cletus's daughter. And according to Cletus, giving a cow to someone is a sign of proposing. During all this, we get nice moments between Mary and Bart, and while yes, it's nothing romantic and doesn't lead up to anything in subsequent episodes, but their relationship in this episode is pretty nice and honestly cute. We even get scenes like this which in retrospect, feel like a tease for what was to come between them in the future.
Mom, I have to do this. I love that big old cow.
How could you say that? I starved myself to get into this dress.
No. You look great, honey. Mom, if I don't get married, they'll take Lou.
Bart and Mary during their wedding don't seem to be psyched about getting married, especially Bart, which again confuses things, but whatever. Apocalypse Cow is a solid later entree of the show that feels like the outcast in this trilogy of romance. I think Apocalypse Cow shows their friendship well, plus the episode doesn't completely alienate anything between them. I just wish that it was more built up into the romance that Bart and Mary apparently had, but it looks crystal clear that it was not the writer's intention to explore their relationship when they first came up with this. Alright, on to the next one.
Yeah, how you doing? We're staying here for 2 weeks.
Lord, you're testing me, aren't you?
Hey, keep talking to your friend up there. We'll be doing it on your bed.
Moonshine River is a weird episode to me. Not only does it come out almost half a decade after the original it's based on, but it adds things to the story that was never explained or shown before. But, let me elaborate on that later. Moonshine River has Bart realizing after a petty yet so right comment from Lisa about Bart's relationships, that all the girls he dated seem to, and I quote, "departo di Barto" after realizing the true person Bart is.
Hey, plenty of babes have docked at Porto de Barto.
Yeah, for about a week. But as soon as they get to know the real you, they departo de Barto. That's why you're alone tonight.
Oh my God. Is that true?
Bart's reasonably worried and tries to see if this is true by going to his past girlfriends, which all show anger towards him. By the way, they couldn't get the most iconic love interest for Bart to make a voiced cameo in this episode like the other ones? Like, gee, Simpsons crew, give Jessica Lovejoy some frickin' respect. But, anyways, due to that, Bart goes back to New York to find the last girl that he ever liked. Mary Spuckler. My thoughts on this episode? It's alright. As a Simpsons geek, I truly geeked out when I saw Bart's past girlfriends make cameos in the episode, and I think the episode did a good job shining a light on Bart's love interests and how they mean to him. I think the most notable thing about this episode is the weird Family Guy-like 9/11 joke that sadly made me laugh out loud.
Come on, Dad, you love New York. Now that your two least favorite buildings have been obliterated, Old Penn Station and Shea Stadium.
Lousy, outdated relics.
But, other than that, the humor didn't do much for me. Homer trying to abandon his 10-year-old son in a taxi so he'll never see him again was not something that made me laugh. I'm sorry, I know, real knee slapper. And Homer giving a short speech to Bart about how love doesn't exist except briefly before marriage and that after it's just hanging out with someone that kinda hates you, but can't get it together to leave sounded way more depressing than it was probably meant to be. Plus, the subplot about Lisa and Marge experiencing culture in New York was admittedly just kinda nothing. But, with the actual Bart and Mary stuff, we see Bart meet her as she escaped her home and their relationship is still as sweet as ever in this episode. You can tell that Bart appreciates her in his own little way, and you can see that at the end where when Mary leaves again because Cletus wants to take her back home, Bart doesn't tell him where she went because, well, Mary's the girl that proves girls can like him and that she wouldn't like him anymore if he gave her up. I think that line is very powerful and shows that Bart really thinks of her as special and doesn't want to lose her in any way. I think that's sweet. We even get this surprisingly nice conversation about Mary between Bart and Cletus that's very nice.
You miss her, don't you, son? You want a picture of her for your wallet? Oh, she's somewhere in B3.
Thanks, man.
And I would be lying if I didn't say, I wouldn't mind seeing more of this dynamic. We do end up seeing a bit more subtle negatives to their relationship that ultimately seem to foreshadow their eventual breakup in the final episode of the trilogy. Like, when Bart simply can't just listen to Mary playing a song for him and feeling the need to rap in between it, or Mary straight up saying that he had some problems that needed to be fixed. But, in the end, Moonshine River is a solid development of Bart and Mary's relationship that does a decent job at expanding on that. While I do think in quality, it's much worse than Apocalypse Cow, I do think that this episode gives us a good amount of insight into their relationship and what makes it work and what makes it special to Bart, which ultimately helps the next episode's case as it's the episode where their not too long relationship ends.
Mary's gone.
I can't.
Boy, you squeal like a piggy for the hillbilly man.
I can't because Mary's the girl that proves that girls can like me. And she wouldn't like me anymore if I gave her up. So I won't, even if you torture me like you do the English language.
Oh, well, if that ain't aren't the isn't.
That sure makes up for my dad beating me last night.
Love is a many splintered thing is easily the best episode of this saga or trilogy. I dunno, I keep mixing them up and making it more inconsistent, but, upon the first watch, I did not really care for this episode. I thought Moonshine River was the best episode of the arc and that Love is a many splintered thing was this rushed mediocre episode that gave Bart garbage for nothing and was just overall an unnecessary sequel to a kinda unnecessary sequel that wrapped things up in a nice bow between Mary and Bart. But, after months of maturing and watching R's credit videos, I learned something. And that lesson was that this episode was not bad at all. For the people that don't know or were just not straight up listening to that little hint I dropped in Moonshine River, this is the episode where Bart and Mary officially break up, despite Mary having to leave in the previous episode. She comes back to Springfield Elementary without telling Bart, I guess, and their relationship starts anew. But, the thing is that Bart is just a 10-year-old boy, and the simple thing is that a guy like him simply can't give the needs that Mary wants. When Mary just wants to talk to Bart, all he does is ignore her and continue to play video games. When Mary writes an entire song dedicated to Bart, Bart just can't actually listen to her and pay attention to the kind lyrics that she's saying about him. When Mary loses a contest and all she needs is genuine comfort from her boyfriend, Bart just can't deliver. I don't think it's Bart's fault or anything, far from it, but it's just the fact that it's not in his character to do so. And in plenty, and I truly mean plenty of past episodes showing Bart trying to be someone he isn't for a girl or even trying to be in a relationship, common things like this always show. He's either being someone he isn't or just not being able to deliver on what the girl wants. Bart just isn't made for anyone, and I think in a way, that's a very interesting part of his character. Back to the episode, Bart and Homer stay at a hotel for guys whose women just don't want to see them right now, of which Homer is of course a frequent member. And because of something that Homer did earlier in the episode, Homer tries to make it up to Marge like he always does in these marriage crisis episodes. It's predictable but in a way satisfying and comforting to know that Homer and Marge just will never not be together, no matter what. Now, at this point of the episode, Mary and Bart have already broken up. So, Bart tries to follow in his dad's footsteps and tries to get Mary back by doing a huge romantic gesture. All the guys at the hotel do in fact, and of course, we the audience know that Homer and Marge will get back together as I said. So, seeing that in the same episode, it looks like Bart just might get his girl back. But, no. He doesn't. He faces one of the most heartbreaking moments in his life when the special girl, the girl that proves that girls can like him, leaves. It's kind of heartbreaking to see that everyone else gets a happy ending, including the new boy dating Mary, except Bart. And, I'm sorry but I kinda dig it. One thing that I really liked in this episode was the Homer, Marge and Mary Bart parallels. Throughout the episode, we saw Homer deal with marriage issues, but everyone and their grandma knows that Homer and Marge will never break up. They are unstoppable, for better and worse. But, with Mary and Bart, we see a more realistic depiction of a relationship. Thinking about it is not listening or ignoring or even not being able to say the right things to a loved one, not something we see frequently from Homer Simpson. Yet, he gets a pass, because we love him, and regardless of what happens between Homer and Marge, we would not want to see the realistic depiction where they legitimately get divorced. But, with Bart and Mary, it's a newfound relationship and we see Bart follow in his father's footsteps, and while his dad gets a pass and will and has many times again, Bart doesn't. He has to deal with the fact that they can't and won't work, because Bart can't give what Mary wants. And in the end, that's not necessarily a sad ending. Mary doesn't hate Bart, although that song that she plays in the middle of the episode that's really good, and my god, Simpsons please make another album with the newer songs, says otherwise. The ending makes it clear that Mary has no bad feelings towards Bart and didn't want to have to break up with him, but knew she had to because Bart wasn't right for her. Even Bart himself at the end, which I forgot to say that this is an homage to Annie Hall for whatever reason, this is modern Simpsons we're talking about, but Bart just realizes that love isn't for him and the cure to any love-related problem is video games. And in that moment, after all that drama, and after everything that happened within these 3 episodes, the show just reminds us that Bart is still just some immature, goofy, and dim-witted 10-year-old boy and seems to forget everything that happened in a second due to video games. But, partly doesn't because, in the very end, he's still looking at her profile and wondering if he has a chance. Which, in a way, gives us a little hope for Bart. And that's the end of the Mary Spuckler Saga art trilogy. My thoughts on the trilogy or saga? I thought it was a very interesting experiment from the writers that I'm glad they did. It's been a long time that The Simpsons has been on the air, and it's truly appreciated when they attempt to change the status quo a tiny bit for different types of stories. We've gotten some amazing experimental stuff from the show recently at the time that I've made this, so I'm glad that they've been following up on that. I do feel like if they did want to explore that relationship originally from Apocalypse Cow, they should have done an episode in between Apocalypse Cow and Moonshine River showing them going from friends to lovers so that the relationship would seem less out of nowhere. But hey, if they ever want to explore that relationship again, they always have their weird future flashback episodes. In the end, the Mary Spuckler Saga trilogy was a very interesting trilogy saga. Some episodes were better than others, but overall, I wouldn't mind them doing more cool stuff like this in the future. Anyways, thanks for watching guys. And to all of my 62 and counting subscribers that subscribed to my channel and got no actual content since the day I made it, I appreciate you guys a lot. And again, thanks for listening to a talking waffle ramble about some weird stuff from a show about funny yellow people. Waffle out.